guys, Jeremy here with FM Outdoors. Today we're going to be breaking down an Abu Garcia Pro Max 3 baitcaster reel. So let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and jump in and get started. Alright, now we got our camera set up. We are going to start the teardown process of this Pro Max 3. First things first is we're going to remove this screw and the nut plate. And then remove the nut to take the handle off. Simply unscrew that. And just pro tip, you can just group all your parts together that need to be grouped together. Okay, I guess we gotta take the nut off first. Oh, it is loose. It's already loose. Huh, there we go. Alright, set that off to the side. Take that off. So underneath your handle there is a washer. Let's go ahead and simply remove that. Sorry, arm in the way. Next thing, we'll go ahead and take the drag tension off. So just hold your thumb in the spool and just turn it counterclockwise. Unscrew it. So there's no random washers. Alright. So let's go ahead and remove this drag assembly. Just like that. There are two washers inside of that assembly. So make sure you set those off to the side. I will show y'all the correct way of putting those back on the reassembly side of this video. There is a small washer that is on. Let's see if I can try to get it out. There we go. That sits on top of this bearing sleeve. Let's pull that whole bearing sleeve out. There's that washer. We'll set that aside. Alright, let's take our spool tension off. Remove that guy. We'll go ahead and start the process of taking off the side plate. So to remove the side plate, just take your thumb, your nail, and just grab a hold of the edge, push it off to your right, and then slide the side plate up towards this guy. Take the side plate off. Got that off. Go ahead and take the spool out. Now we'll start taking screws out for the main side plate. Best way to remember how these screws go in is just lay them the way we took them out. So you got these three side plate screws, and then you got one back here that hangs out and hides in the back. We'll just go ahead and take that one out. Alright, now this side plate is just going to simply slide right on up. We're going to put our bearing sleeve assembly with this along with that washer. Alright, you got your internals, you got your drive gear shaft, drive gear, pinion gear, yoke, springs, the works, the whole assembly in here. So first off, we'll start by taking the drive gear off. And, well, simply just tip it over and remove the washer, drag washer cap. And this washer sits on top of the drag washer cover. Take this out. Just take a little screwdriver or something if you can get in here. Get it out without damaging the thing. There we go. Take that out. That's a nylon washer. Underneath of it, you have the ratchet. And then you have a nylon washer. Bam. There you go. That's disassembled. So next order of business, we're going to go ahead and remove the pinion gear and yoke assembly, which is here. It's pinion gear, it's 2 springs, the yoke. Alright, we'll go ahead and start removing the drive gear shaft, drive gear plate. Alright, set these tiny little screws off to the side. These are the screws that go with the drive gear plate. Set them off. Decide to group everything together in which they belong. So below the drive gear plate, we have an E-clip, which is right here. Now just take your screwdriver, a little tiny flathead screwdriver pick or whatever you have on hand. Just get it in there and pull towards you, and it should come right off. Just don't lose it. Again, we're just going to set that off to the side. You have a tiny washer. It's just all right. You have your drive gear bearing. You have a tiny washer that sits on top of the drive gear bearing. Set that off to the side. Bearing. You have a washer that sits down below. And that's it. So next up, we're going to go ahead and just remove this guy. And we're going to take the thumb bar, this whole assembly apart. So we're going to go ahead and, yeah, we'll just go ahead and do it this way. Doing this a little backwards. Typically I take that front off, but I'm just going to go ahead and try and get these lifted. Take a small screwdriver and going through the front. There's a small screw that sits in here. So you can see it right there for the thumb bar. For the thumb bar cover, I should say. Just unscrew that. Get that thing out of there. Get your tweezers. Set the screw out to the side. Now I can go ahead and just remove the whole thing. You gotta be careful with these 2 springs. These springs are under tension. And I'll show you how to properly put those back during the reassembly. So I'm going to set this over here, since that is the first thing we will be taking or putting back together. So for these springs, just place your thumb and just start to gently lift upward. You You can take a pair of pliers, tweezers, just lift the springs out of place. There we go. Pop that loose. Again, I'll show y'all how to put these springs in, and a little known trick that I use to help me remember how they go inside each piece. Alright, be very careful with this front cover because it's thin plastic. Let's go ahead and remove this. Remove the tiny screws off to the side. One on each side. After you get the screws removed, you got another E-clip. You're gonna take your screwdriver, whatever you have on hand, and just pop it loose. All right. We'll go ahead and we can take this front cover off. All right. Now we can go ahead and we can remove this bar. This is your line guide bar. Again, everything is going to be grouped together. So we'll go ahead and remove the worm gear yoke. All right, you got a small washer on the inside. Give it a little love tap. So once you get it just out enough, you can take that washer off. And we can simply remove that yoke. Just gonna put that there. And now, we can go ahead and just push on the worm gear itself to free it up, the whole assembly, and we'll just slide the assembly out. Oh man, this thing really needed a good clean too. All right, we'll take this cover and this washer, set it off to the side there. All right, we're completely disassembled and done with the frame. The last thing we need to disassemble is this worm gear assembly. Now the best way is to simply just hold the gear down, the white gear, push on the worm gear itself. It'll lift up. There is a tiny little pin. I'm not sure if you can see that pin. Yep, there we go. So that tiny pin's going to come out. Just don't lose it. And then we will just simply push the worm gear the opposite direction and pull it out of the housing. Nope, still got to go up. Nope, still got to go down. All right, we'll just push this worm gear up. Okay, I'm just going to take the whole bearing off. Wow, so push the worm gear down. Man, I think it was really stuck. All right, we're fully and completely disassembled. And we'll catch y'all tomorrow. It's late afternoon here, so we'll catch y'all tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and get everything thrown in the degreaser. Let it sit, get them all cleaned up, and we'll get at you tomorrow morning for the reassembly. Yeet! Alright, welcome back, y'all. It's the second day. We have fully let our parts dry after the degrease process. So now we're just going to jump into it and start reassembling this reel. First thing I like to do is like take a little bit of grease, kind of just get it all over the place. I'll just take a small nylon brush and just kind of put it all over. This is just a personal deal I like to do, personal preference. First assembly we're going to do is thumb release. Just grease. Okay, so this is going to go in here. It's like so. So inner workings is this will go around these two posts. Go ahead and place that in. All right, next up, we're going to go ahead and get this in. And this is going to go here. All right. Now we're just going to go, we're going to take these springs and put these in. This hook goes into a small tiny hole on this assembly. I doubt you'll be able to see it. And take our other spring. The best way to remember to put this spring in is this long shaft of the spring is going to be facing up towards the ceiling, and the short shaft of the spring, this is the part that's going to go in, seat inside of the reel frame. And that long shaft fits into a really, really tiny hole right here. So go ahead and get this put in. If I can get it in. There we go. Get this to fully seat. Well, once we get the springs in. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and get the spring seated into the housings. So for this spring here, there's a small tiny housing hole right there, and for this spring the hole is right there. You may not be able to see it, but they are there. And the way I like to do is take a pair of small needle nose pliers and just grab a hold just about where the shoulder is of the spring. It's in there. Yeah, she's in there. All right, now we're gonna do this one. So when you're putting these springs back in, when you get one spring in, just kind of hold your thumb over it, keep it from popping loose, flying into oblivion. This one's gonna be a little tougher. Just push that in there. Bam, we got it. Alright, I'm just going to put some grease on just this outer surface here. So we're about to put this plate back on and secure this thumb housing. Just smudge that around. Take a little bit of real oil. Put that on there. Ease up the friction. So go ahead and just start placing our screws in. And this is why you hold your springs down. Alright, we are good. Take your tweezers, pliers, whatever you have on hand. Just get it placed in there. And just tighten that down all the way. Take your shorty. Don't lose it. So next step, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put this little plate on. Flat side is going to go down. That's going to seat in there just like that. We're going to take whatever grease we have on our brush. This is a surface the screw is going to slide on. Go ahead and place your screw in. Tighten them down. Go ahead and just put our button thumb latch cover, and that's just going to seat just like that. Take our screw. And there you go. That thumb latch assembly, thumb release assemblies finished. So next up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start putting the worm gear assembly together. So your bearing, So slide in just like this, using Lucas oils. Using Lub's Hyperspeed bearing lube. That's made by Lucas Oils. Great products. I am not sponsored by them, as you can tell. Tiny YouTuber. We'll take our worm gear. We're not going to put any grease on this, and I'll show y'all why at the end of the video. I'm just going to go ahead and slide this in. Hold your... There we go. We're going to take our gear, go ahead and put it on. You have to be really careful. This tiny pin will go off into oblivion. And that tiny pin sits in this, it slides right into the top of the worm gear. All right. So we're gonna take that tiny pin I just showed you. Let's put them in a pair of pliers. This slingshot off into oblivion on my workbench. I'm just gonna slide into that tiny little hole I showed y'all. Just like that. Now, to get this to seat, this top of this gear has 4 slots, one for each side of this pin. We'll just simply rotate the gear and just slide it up just like that. Let's push the whole worm gear down and you're set, good to go. Alright, we'll take a little bit of grease. The line guide does right on this. Just grease the outside of that. We'll go ahead and add this, the line guide. I don't know if y'all can see that. If y'all can't, just simply slides in. Alright, we're not going to fully assemble that just yet because now we have to do... Alright, next assembly we're going to do is the drive gear shaft assembly. So just put your gear on, get you a little bit of grease in there. Put your gear on. Then we're going to put this on. The flat surface is going to go down into the reel. So make sure, don't forget your washer, your tiny little washer. Flat side is going to go down into the reel. Then we're going to put our bearing on. Put you a little bit of bearing lube on it. Put your washer on. The next thing, you're gonna take this take the E-clip. Take this E-clip. I'm gonna put it on. If you can try. You can get it started. Usually, you can get it started. Just takes a little bit of patience. If you have to, just hold that washer down. Take your pliers and snap it in just like that. That's out of the way. Alright, now we can go ahead and mate this assembly with this gear. Just remember that this has to be done first, as well as this. And we'll go ahead and we're just going to slide this in and mate these two. Get that lined up. Get that worm gears cover lined up. Bam, there we go. Just like that. Go ahead and put your screws in. Hold it in place. Alright, take your other screw. Drop it into place. Kind of a pain. Make sure them holes are lined up. Let's go ahead and get that screwed in. Alright. Now we're going to come around to this side. This is our next point of interest. I don't know if you can see this. There are two cutouts on that worm gear shaft cover that this little guy has to fit into. This little guy, you can see the little nipples on it. It simply slides on just like that. All you gotta do is pretty much just line it up. You may have to rotate that just a little bit. There we go, to get it to fully seat. We'll take our small washer, place that on there. Let's put a little bit of grease on it just because. Alright, next up we're gonna take our E-clip after we sit this thing back down. Take our E-clip, get it started. Clip it in just like that. Check and make sure there's no random grinding. We're good. We are going to go ahead, put our line pawl in, our gear worm pawl. That was a little bit of grease just on the main portion of it. And the tip. Place this in there. Now get this to fully seat, just turn. There we go, it's fully seated. What I do to get that to fully seat is just turn, put a little bit of pressure on it so it would catch and get inside these grooves. So next up, the tiny little washer that came with it. Just put that in. Take your cap. Just screw it on. Next we'll take our line guide shaft. hit that with a little bit of the goody good stuff. Slide that right on in there. Maneuver it around. And we're golden. So this shaft, this line guide shaft, goes here on the line guide itself. We'll take our cover. Go ahead and put this back on, so be really careful. It just slides over. And we're golden. To our other screw. Screw placement for these, for this cover, is self-explanatory. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to place this, put this in its house. So this goes in this large hole right here. Now you can see it. Alright, this fits in just like that. That's for your side plate. Alright, next up is going to be the pinion gear yoke and springs. And we're going to lube the snot out of this one. Put a good decent amount of grease in here, and I'll show you why. Get this all nice and lubed up. Alright, we'll go ahead, we'll take our pinion gear and this cutout, it's got a cutout for the yoke, and it just slides in. And that's why you always use a lot of grease, because it helps it stick. A little bit of grease down here on the bottom of it. Alright. Now we're just going to go ahead, we're just going to hit these yoke shafts a little bit with grease. Hit it with some real oil. And put the pinion gear. Got to kind of maneuver it around a little bit to get it to fit in its house. So if you're ever in a position where this pinion gear yoke's not sitting flush, it's just sitting like that, just remember your button has to be up. So once you slide the button up, you can slide the pinion gear yoke down and it'll fit flush into its housing. Alright, so we're going to go ahead now, put these springs on real quick. Don't forget your yoke springs. They fit right on top of the shaft, just like that. Gotta hit this bottom of this gear with a little bit of grease. We're gonna put the ratchet on. The ratchet, flat side goes down on the ratchet. Does not go like this. Not the bevel side. So the bottom of this ratchet's got This ratchet's cut out for the drive gear shaft. So just put it in there until it fits, and that's it. We'll take this nylon washer. I'm just gonna stick it there. I'll just hit it with some fresh grease. And oil. I'll just go ahead and simply slide that on. Next order of biz. What I like to do, this is a personal preference of mine, I put cow's drag grease. You do not need a lot of this stuff. This stuff will, let's put cow's drag grease all in here. I'll take a little bit of real oil to help ease that friction up. Just like that. I'll just drop my nylon washer in. I'll drop this in. Just like so. Take this small little washer. Drop it on top. Hit that little washer with some grease. Just like so. We hit these yoke springs too with a little bit of grease. And now I'm just going to go ahead and lube up the teeth of the gear, drive gear. Just kind of rotate it. I know. Someone's gonna say you're using too much grease. Well, this is true. I do use a lot of grease. My brain tells me it's not enough when I put very little. I know some is better than none. I guess it's an OCD tick of sorts. Alright, that's done. Now we can go ahead and start putting our main side plate on. Wipe this off. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to just take some bearing lube. Get on the bearing cover. And we're just going to slide this in. Just got to be really careful not to knock those little roller bearings out. Alright. Now the way to put this on, you just got to match this opening with the top of the main drive gear shaft. And it'll fit. Got to kind of work it, and that will come out. It's just something that happens, but you can always push that back in. There we go. Got a little bit of tension from the springs. That's good. This tiny little washer sits on top. Alright, now we're going to start putting our screws back together, back on. So keep this in place. Screw this in. Let's go ahead and screw all these down. This last screw goes in the back. We're going to do a quick test. It's engaging, it's disengaging, no holdups, perfect. Take a little bit of bearing loop, hit this bearing in here. Gonna hit this with just a little bit of grease for the spool tensioner. Alright, just quick pro tip real quick, y'all. If you're ever out on the water and you're real screaming, just happen to have some real oil or real grease, which I always carry both. Or if you're just doing general basic maintenance, to get your reel to stop screaming, you can put a little bit of grease on the inside of this pad on the spool tension knob. Put you a little bit of grease in there, maybe a little bit of real oil too. And just for the sake of maintenance video, I'm gonna hit that with a little bit of grease. But that's typically all you would have to do out in the field. We're gonna hit this spool bearing with some real oil. I'm gonna go ahead and slide this in. Now to get this to seat properly, I gotta do is just rotate it a little bit and it'll catch. Go ahead and put our spool back on, spool tensioner back on. Alright, the same deal for the other side plate. Just put you a little bit of grease in there, oil or whatever you want to use, or just put it on the end of the shaft. It works too. Just slide this bad boy in just like that. Take your finger, slide that bad boy down. Bam, we're almost done. Now we're going to take this guy, your drag, what the, there we go. Take that. Now, these washers sit specific. These washers sit nope. All right, so the next step are these washers, and these washers do sit specific to each other. So one side is going to be down, the other side is going to be up. You'll have a gap, something like that. Let's go ahead and stir a little bit of grease on them. Put this one down. Hit the other one. This one is going to be facing upward. Hit the inside of your drag tensioner because there's little nipples. May not have, but this specific model, yes. And all you're going to do is patiently put this on, because you will cross thread. It takes trial and error to get this to seat properly. Just hold the spool with your thumb. There we go. Next up, let's take a little bit of grease. Not much. Just get this to stick. I just used the wrong one. It'll be alright. Just take this washer for your reel. Take your handle at this point, slide that on. Again, it's going to be trial and error with that. Take your wrench, your ratchet, tighten that nut down. Now to get this to seat properly, get this hole lined up with this screw hole. Trial and error. Usually all you got to do is tighten the nut, and this will move with the nut, and you can get your screw hole lined up properly. Bam. Alright, so the last order of business is this, the worm gear. And the reason why I never put grease on it is because this is just how I do it. And that's how I do. I always put real oil in here also. And there we go. All right, y'all. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Suggestions always welcome, as long as it's constructive and not hateful. And we'll catch y'all in the next one. Yeet. I appreciate y'all tuning in today. If you have any questions regarding your fishing reel, please send an email to me. I'll have the email linked down in the description below. And I appreciate y'all tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, do the works, and hit that notification button if it's even there. I'd really appreciate it. I'd appreciate all the support. Well, tight lines, we'll catch y'all in the next video.